In this video, I'll be taking a look at an official Xbox One controller. This controller has some obvious damage to the right stick, but otherwise it looks in pretty decent condition. Removing the battery cover, we can see that the sticker is still intact over the screw hole, which indicates that this controller hasn't been opened up previously. We can also see that this is a model 1914 controller, which at the time of making this video is the most recent version of the Xbox One controller. The other screws are also hidden on this controller, but can be accessed by removing the clip-on plastic covers. With the outer screws now removed, the only one left to deal with is the one that's under the sticker. If you rub your finger in the area, you should be able to feel where the screw hole is. And in fact, now that I've pressed down on it, you can also see it. You should be able to pop through this label with your screwdriver. With all the screws removed, it's easy to take the controller apart and get down to the motherboard. I was hoping it would be a damaged cap, but we can see here that the cap's intact. The damage is to the centre part of the stick, which we can see is very loose. I'd guess that this controller's either been dropped or perhaps thrown, and this has caused parts inside the stick to break. The only way to fix this is to replace the stick. To remove the board from this inner plastic frame, there's a couple of screws that need to be removed, as well as a few wires that need to be desoldered. These two antenna wires also need to be unplugged to separate the two halves of the board. Be careful when doing this, as the connectors can be quite fragile. The top half of the board can now be removed. Be sure to pull straight upwards on it due to the connector underneath that attaches to the lower half. Before removing the stick, I'm just going to open out the two potentiometers, which are the green parts attached on two sides of the stick. At this point, it's impossible to tell if these will need replacing, but for now I'm just going to replace the inner part of the stick that we can see is physically damaged. They're easy to unclip using a flat tool. A flathead screwdriver should do the job. Looking closer, you can see that there are two clips holding them in place. With a proper desoldering tool, it will be easy to desolder all of the points holding the stick in place and then remove it. However, if you're using a standard soldering iron, it can actually be rather tricky. This is largely due to the stick's metal exterior, which will conduct the heat away from the joint that you're trying to desolder. What I'm going to do instead, to make the job a little bit easier, is to use a pair of pliers to try and chop up this stick into smaller sections which can then be desoldered more easily. Fortunately, only the top part of the metal case actually holds all of the sides together. Opened out, you can imagine it would look similar to a cardboard box. Obviously, you need to take care doing this not to damage the board, particularly when trying to remove the plastic section on the bottom. I'd also recommend not trying to remove any parts of the metal shell. You just want to simply split it up into pieces, each of which is connected to the board by a single solder joint. This will then be much easier to desolder, as the heat will be contained in that single piece that you're working on. All that's left now is to clean up the solder joints, removing any of the remaining pieces of metal and clearing them of any solder so that a new stick can be fitted. The final part that needs to be removed and cleaned up is the button that's activated when pushing the stick down. Again, this will just be the same process as before, chopping the old button off the board, then cleaning up the solder joints. Once all of the solder joints are clear, it's as simple as putting the new stick on the board and soldering it in place. Usually when you buy new sticks, they will have potentiometers attached to them, so if you've left the old ones in the board, you will need to unclip these before installing the new stick. Once the stick's installed, all that's left to do is to put the controller back together. The stick in this controller has been replaced successfully and it's now working perfectly. It's not too difficult a fix to do, though it is of course much quicker if you've got a proper desoldering tool. For a one-off, it's probably not worth purchasing one, but if this is something you're interested in doing more frequently, then it's definitely worth considering. I hope you like this video. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to stick around for the next one.